Welcome, friends. I'm so glad to see your faces in this Zoom room today. Some of you I know, and others are who are perhaps connecting with the BTS Center for the first time. We've gathered today for the first event in a new series of public conversations called Let's Talk Conversations That Matter, hosted by the BTS Center. My name is Alan Ewing-Merrill. I serve as executive director of the BTS Center, and I'm logging in today from Portland, Maine, and I'm just delighted to welcome you all to this session. The BTS Center is a private operating foundation growing from the deep roots of the former Bangor Theological Seminary. We seek to catalyze spiritual imagination with enduring wisdom for transformative faith leadership. And we do that by offering workshops and retreats, learning communities, reading groups, public conversations like this one, and projects of applied research, all focused around cultivating and nurturing spiritual leadership for a climate-changed world. Today, I'm looking forward to this conversation with Sue Inches, author, educator, environmental activist, whom I'll introduce in just a moment. I'm glad to be joined today by two of my colleagues here at the BTS Center, Kay Ahmed, who's our operations manager. Hi, Kay. And she's going to be recording and screen sharing and managing technology kind of behind the scenes. And Reverend Nicole Deeroff, our associate director here at the BTS Center. Nicole's going to pop in a couple of times and serve as our chat chaplain. So a warm welcome to each of you on behalf of all of us who are part of the BTS Center team, our staff team, our board of trustees, and a special welcome to those of you who may be finding the BTS Center for the very first time today. Also want to offer a warm hello to those of you who may be watching the recording at a later date. Nicole, would you hop on and lead us in a time of sharing?
Yes, thank you, Alan, and welcome to all of you gathered here over this lunch hour on the East Coast anyways, and please feel free to munch as you listen. I'd like to invite you to put on your digital name tag with however you would like to be known in this space. And I invite you to open up the chat so we can greet one another and see who is here with us today. So first thing, I invite you to share, where are you logging in from today? Where are you today? And you can answer this however you feel inspired. If the name of a town is what you want to share, if the indigenous lands that you are on is what you want to share, if you want to tell us what room you're in, whatever is moving you. Yay, a number of different states represented right off the bat. Maine, New York, Oregon, Colorado. Hi, Greg. Nice to see you. California, welcome. Iowa, North Carolina. Beautiful. Hello from South Africa. Hello to you. We're so glad you're here with us. Hi, Ophelia. Here in Maine, land of many grasses, Owascoag. That is my town too. Hello, friends. Rhode Island, Maryland, lovely. So wonderful that this online platform allows us to gather from such many different places. Oh, I see my dad in frigid Pittsburgh. Hi, Dad. Okay, next question for you. I am wondering, and if you haven't, keep typing if you're still typing, but the next prompt is something climate change related that feels at risk today. Just want to create a space for some of those things that we are holding that feel threatened right now. Yeah, something climate change related that feels at risk is on your heart today. Hi, Doug. Nice to see you in the chat. The Paris Agreement. Yes, our whole freaking planet. Thank you, Molly. Hi, Molly. Nice to see you. Forests, environmental justice for Indigenous peoples. Yes. Thank you, friends. Drought and flooding, the World Health Organization. Yes. Clean drinking water. The bill signed today that opens federal land to largely unregulated mining. Biodiversity. The sacred salmon in the waters where I live. Thank you for that, Shelby. So many more. Thank you. Please keep putting those in the chat if you've started typing something. Last but not least, we'll balance out some of what feels at risk with some of what is lighting you up. So the prompt is something climate change related that is lighting you up today in a good way, something that's life-giving, something that you're drawing energy from. Let's share with one another that we might collect those things that light us up. Beautiful, Mary. Thanks for that first one. Community and music. Yes, me too. Birds at a bird feeder, a group of people like this. Yes. Third act. Snowstorms in Baltimore. Students who work on the Arizona Trail. Beautiful. Many birds, many bird sightings. God's a bird. Let's look for the birds. Kids sledding. Beautiful. The minister who spoke truth to power at the National Day of Prayer. Thank you, Beth. I was watching that. I watched that yesterday. Thank you. Thank you, friends, for all these contributions. I invite you to continue to read what people are putting into the chat. And thank you for choosing to show up today, January the 23rd, at this midday time for this particular conversation. We are so glad you're here. Alan.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I appreciated those questions very much. And it's always a combination of things, right? It's not an either or. It's really important to move away from those binaries so that we can stay fully grounded and present and face the challenges that are before us. So now I'm so excited to introduce our guest for this conversation, who just magically appeared on your screen, and that is Sue Inches. Since childhood, Sue Inches has envisioned a world that is compassionate, inclusive, and environmentally aware. She held firmly to that vision through 25 years in her career in public policy. As deputy director of the Maine State Planning Office, she represented Maine's governor as an organizer and lobbyist on environmental issues, everything from fisheries and working waterfront access and land use planning to smart growth, building and energy codes, energy policy, community finance, and rural broadband. And we're so delighted that Sue's work has brought her into deep connection with the BTS Center. Today, Sue shares her gift as a speaker, educator, author, and advocate for environmental rights and energy democracy. She has taught advocacy courses at Colby, Bates, and Colorado colleges, and she's the author of this book entitled Advocating for the Environment: How to Gather Your Power and Take Action, published by North Atlantic Books in 2021. Today, Sue is with us to share some of what she experienced and encountered through a sort of pilgrimage that she took with a group of 5 others from her church, which is First Parish, United Church of Christ in Yarmouth, Maine, when they traveled just 2 days after the election to Louisiana, and over the course of 10 days, spent time with leaders and organizers and people of faith, learning about the struggle for civil and environmental rights in a region known as Cancer Alley. Sue, welcome. We're so glad that you're with us. Thanks for saying yes to this invitation.
Yes, well, thank you, Alan, and to the BTS Center for having me today. I'm really glad to be here with all of you.
Great. Well, let's just kick this right off. And I wonder if you might just share a little bit about this experience you've had not too long ago. Where did you go? What did you do while you were there? What prompted you to take this journey? Just share the basics.
So yes, so we did leave about 2 days after the election, 5 people from my church, First Parish, Yarmouth, Maine. And our purpose was to witness and learn about the civil rights movement in the 1950s and 60s and the fight for environmental justice going on in this area today. So that's what we were doing. We wanted to go and learn and witness and hear the stories of the people there. And I had a personal interest in Cancer Alley because in researching for my book, I had come across the story of what's going on down there. And Cancer Alley is a section of the Mississippi River. It's about 85 miles between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. And in that 85 miles are 150 petrochemical plants. So we're talking about oil refineries, plastic plants, chemical manufacturing, all of that. And as the name Cancer Alley would suggest, the toxic emissions in that area are beyond, good health limits. And people live there. There are many towns and communities there, and the people living there are mostly Black working class American citizens. So we wanted to go and meet them. And I, in particular, wanted to meet the organizers because in my reading and research, I had heard about these remarkable people who are standing up to corporations and to government that wants to invite industry into the area. So I was really excited to go and meet the people down there.
Thank you, Sue. And I just want to acknowledge that we have at least one person with us today from Louisiana. That is Susan Heimel, who hangs out with us at the BTS Center fairly frequently. Hi, Susan. I wonder, I can't see everyone in the Zoom array, but I wonder if there might be others from Louisiana as well. And if so, I encourage you to say hello in the chat. I mention that because I'm here in Portland, Maine. Sue, I know you're in the southern Maine area as well, and that can feel far away, but this is a real place where people are living. And just want to acknowledge that some folks who have a real, close geographic proximity to Cancer Alley are with us in the room today. Sue, can you share a little bit about the historical context here? Obviously, this area of Louisiana hasn't always been impacted by petrochemical plants and factories and refineries. So, based on what you learned, how did Cancer Alley come to be?
Well, that's a really good question and one that I've been sort of studying since I took this trip. And it starts with the fact that for many generations, Louisiana was a fairly poor state. And back in the 1960s, most people thought that the way to address that was to invite heavy industry in, right? The idea was that if we could bring these industries in, there might be jobs and prosperity, all of that sort of thing. So the state of Louisiana offered tax breaks, pretty easy permitting, not very strong environmental monitoring or enforcement, because they were asking these companies to come in. And even the people that lived there thought this was a good idea at first. But no one had any idea that the cumulative effect of this would be, a toxic environment, right? And I have to tell you that the prosperity that was promised, it certainly didn't happen for the local communities, right? Because there were jobs, but most of these plants are highly automated. So the number of jobs are really quite small. And then many of those jobs require engineering degrees or technical skills that local people don't generally have. So it didn't help, sort of local jobs. And then added to that, people's property values. If you owned a home or lived in a town in that area, well, nobody wants to live in a industrial zone, right? So property values for people living there plummeted basically, and that hurt local businesses. And basically, and with no sort of good tax income, there was really not extra revenue to invest in health or education or transportation infrastructure. So kind of as a result, the local communities have really been devastated by this. It turned out to be sort of the opposite of what people thought was going to happen by doing this.
Yeah, thank you for rehearsing that history for us. And it's such an important reminder because sometimes we are, tempted to buy into some of the rhetoric about all the benefits that might come, but often those come with unintended consequences or even intended
Yeah.
consequences. People even, who are behind all of this often know what the consequences will be, even if they're not honest about those. I've one of the concepts that I've been learning about, and I'm sure this is a familiar concept for you, is just the ways in which, of course, all justice issues are intersectional. And Cancer Alley is a glaring example of environmental racism, the ways that racism and ecological injustice intersect, and also, of course, the ways in which environmental devastation intersects with poverty. It sounds like you saw that firsthand in a really glaring way.
Yeah, we certainly did. And one of the things that you find out is that these plants are not built in areas where white people live generally. There really is a racist element to this. Of course, the other thing about it is these communities are right along the river. So another motivation is to, they needed the river access as well. But it really is something where public health and the people living there have not been considered to be important. In fact, these corporations are focused on making a profit, right? And that they feel like social issues are not their responsibility. And unfortunately, the state of Louisiana has kind of sided with the corporations in that way.
Yeah. I want to call make to mind here the comment from Marvin Ellison in the chat. Marvin is a former professor at Bangor Theological Seminary, taught Christian ethics for many years, and he's reminding us to add to the environmental racism, the prison industrial complex,
Oh
mass
yeah,
incarceration. These things are always sort of hand in hand.
yeah.
Thank you for that note, Marvin. So I'm pretty sure that your message here isn't, I went to Cancer Alley and you should too. So I'm wondering what are the takeaways here, Sue? Are there lessons or principles or insights that you're drawing from this experience that you had that you want to highlight for those who are listening who might be just sort of universally relevant?
Absolutely. In fact, one of the things I can say is that despite the kind of racism and oppression that we saw, I actually was very inspired by the people I met there. Um, the organizers, there's about maybe 20 or so grassroots groups in Cancer Alley, and we met with leaders of four of those while we were there. And I would say every single person was a person of great courage, strength, and faith. I mean, they are taking on some big things, and they are committed, they're positive, and they're joyful. So that to me, it was like they could easily have taken a stance as victims. They could say, well, this is terrible and we're victims. And, they didn't do that. They decided to stand up for their communities. And then this kind of leads to another takeaway. And this one I teach about in my classes, and that is the power of organizing. So, basically, the leaders down there of the grassroots groups had no money, no connections, and no experience in organizing things. But what they decided to do was get together. They were meeting in one group, just met in someone's garage to start, and they said, we don't have much, but we're going to stand up for what we believe. And they had T-shirts printed and they made signs, and they went and they stood up on a piece of property where a huge new plastics plant was proposed. Well, the really interesting thing about this, and I love this, is that within a very short time, like within a year, they had attracted funding from Bloomberg's Beyond Petrochemicals program. They had attracted technical assistance from a group called the Louisiana Bucket Brigade. They gave training and strategic planning and showed them how to raise money. And they had legal representation from Earth Justice. And there were also a number of other foundations and groups who chipped in to support them. So the lesson here is sometimes you just need to speak up. They didn't have much on their own, but once they spoke up, resources have flowed into them in their support. So it's been just an amazing story that way and a very inspiring one.
And it sounds like that work has been really impactful in a lot of really important ways. Such a great reminder because often we see these big things happening on the grand stage and we think, oh, there's nothing I can do. But there's always something we can do. and also
Absolutely.
to not discredit the role of faith as a motivating factor.
Yeah.
Sort of that faith values groundwork, which can really be the foundation for really important organizing and change making. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, people were very out front with us about their faith. Sharon Levine is one of the leaders of a group called Rise St. James. And she said to me, she said, I prayed about this and God told me to stand up and fight for my community and nothing is going to stop me. I mean, she was so grounded in that. I mean, you have to believe her. She is just driven by her faith. And many others also brought up their faith in what they were doing. So absolutely, that's a key element here.
Sharon Levine. We need more Sharon Levines, and each one of us can be a Sharon Levine right where we are, right?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is perhaps a good segue because, here we are just 3 days after Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which also this year happened to collide with the inauguration. And I suspect that many of us who are gathered in this Zoom room today are thinking a lot about the impacts of this election, sort of what's coming, what's already underway. So, yeah, I think it's fair to say that the inauguration of President Trump is not particularly good news for the climate justice movement. Already he's withdrawn from the Paris Climate Accord, which I saw someone mentioned in the chat earlier, and all the other international climate agreements, abandoned some of the previous administration's commitments to renewable energy, electric vehicles, et cetera, dropped a bunch of protections and funding priorities, and really just expressed his commitment to drill, baby, drill. So I wonder how you're thinking about all of that, especially in light of your experiences in Cancer Alley and in light of the climate catastrophes we're witnessing in Western North Carolina and Southern California and so many other places. How are you thinking about this particular moment and the political context that we find ourselves in?
Yeah, I agree. It is very disappointing to see some of the policies that the Trump administration is pursuing on the environment. I mean, there's just like I can't sugarcoat that. It's very difficult and bad news, right? But there was one positive piece of news in the November elections that most people didn't hear about. And I actually wrote a newsletter column about this about a week and a half ago. And what it was is that there were 13 environmental referendums across the country in November. So these were across the country. They're red and blue states. They're all measures to protect and preserve regional, state, and local environments. And the thing that's cool about it is that they all passed, and they all passed with over 60% of the vote, which was incredible. And what this tells us is that people really do care about the environment around them. When it comes to protecting a river, a lake, a coastline, some mountains in their area, the places they love, they're going to come out and support that. And not only support that, they're going to spend money on it. So all of these referendums, the total amount of money was, I believe, $18 billion.
Wow.
Because many of them were bond issues to, create trails, to protect wildlife and habitat and that sort of thing. So I think it tells us something really, really important about where we go from here. And what I'd like to think is that we just need to keep protecting and preserving those places we love because there's bipartisan support for doing that. So yes, Trump can say things about drill, baby, drill, but if the drilling is in your neighborhood, people are going to stand up and oppose that. And not only that, they're going to do things to protect the habitat and all. So I think, this is the strategy that I think actually can work. And I do think too that the Trump administration is out of touch with what people really want here. Because what I think is that we may be at a tipping point for the environment. People really care about it, and people are experiencing all of these things. As you mentioned, the wildfires in California, storms, all sorts of things, and people are aware of this and they want to protect those places they love. So I think that's at least one little bright light on the horizon is if we just keep doing that, if we keep protecting the places we love, it's going to lift all of us up. And I'll give you one little example of that. So we recently had a spill of PFAS contaminated firefighting foam in Maine. It was a pretty big spill. And the people that were in charge of that area, they couldn't get this contaminated foam out of the state fast enough. They're like, get this stuff out of here right away. Well, they did that. It got shipped to a small rural town in Arkansas where it could be reprocessed. But what I learned about that when I looked it up was that the people in Arkansas were too afraid to say anything. Well, my nephew or my cousin work at the factory, so I don't want to say anything because it might jeopardize that person's job. Well, we've got the example now of Cancer Alley where people are standing up for the community, and that's going to help the place in Arkansas, right? So every place that stands up and is successful is actually helping every other place in doing that. So this is how we don't give up on the whole, but we focus on those places that we love and just make as much progress as we can there. So to me, that suggests kind of the strategy of where we need to put our energy and effort and time now.
Thank you for sharing that piece of good news and the specific stories behind it, Sue. And I think you're right. This is a really important point. Um, when people care about places, they are much more likely to want to preserve them. So part of this is something we think about a lot at the BTS Center. And part of
Mm,
what we're trying to do is to help people fall in love or fall in love all over again with
mm,
the beautiful spots in creation. We are not separate from nature. We are part of nature, but to fall in love and be in relationship with these places. And then we will be motivated to try to preserve those. And if that's happening everywhere, that's how the movement builds. So I think that's a
exactly.
really important point that you're making. I want to
Exactly.
invite those of you who are listening, if you have a question for Sue, just drop it in the chat. Nicole is going to kind of monitor those. And we're happy to weave your questions into our conversation today. Also at the end at 1 o'clock, when we conclude this conversation, which is being recorded, we'll stop the recording and we'll unmute. And anyone who would like to linger for a few more moments will allow you to ask a question directly to Sue. But if you have a question now, just feel free to pop it into the chat. Also want to just note this great comment from Kathy Brown in the chat. Sometimes we just need to start. That's a really good reminder. We might not have the whole pathway mapped out, but we can start somewhere, and we can start with the places that we love, the places of passion within us.
Well, I think
So
that's exactly what the Cancer Alley folks have done. They
yeah,
just stayed right where
absolutely.
they were, not realizing that things could really grow in the way that they have. So, yeah.
Yeah. Eliana, beautiful comment. Sue, you are offering oxygen when I was holding my breath. That's a beautiful image. Yeah,
Phew, thank you. Thank you for that.
thank you. So you've alluded to this a little bit already, but I wonder if there's anything more you want to say about the importance of voices of faith. Why voices of faith? This is something we think a lot at the BTS Center about is the unique role that faith leaders, people of faith, faith communities can play in this moment. So just from the work that you're doing, from your experience in Cancer Alley and the conversations you're having far and wide, I wonder if there's something more you want to say about the role of voices of faith and why that matters so much in this moment.
Well, sure, absolutely. I mean, historically, the civil rights movement, for example, communities of faith were really important in supporting movements like that. And I think they can be again, and I think will need to be more so in the immediate future. So that I think is important. But I also think individual faith is really important. And one of the things that I talk about in my classes and workshops is something I call the power of the heart. And what I mean by that is people's internal knowing, their internal knowing of what is right and good and what life could look like, how the beautiful life that we know is possible, what is that like? And that is in our hearts. And the reason that's important is that, at least in advocacy, what I like to say to my students is the job of the environmental advocate is to bring that power of the heart into the room where decisions are made. That's the real role. That's the real job. So here in the room where decisions are made could be your homeowners association, it could be your town council, it could be your state legislature, it could be Congress. It works the same way no matter what decision makers you are approaching. But you want to bring that internal knowing, that power of the heart into that room. And the way that you do that is through your personal earth connection stories. So you need to tell the story of, why do you care about this coastline or this lake or river? That's the power of the heart. You need to talk about why you care, why that's important to your community. Those are the things that are really, really important to do. And I talk a lot about how citizens need to do that, because we have so much corporate lobbying, so much money going into a different point of view. And so citizens need to speak up and say, now, wait a minute, this is how I and my family and my community are impacted by this decision. That's really, I can't say strongly enough how important I think that is.
Such a good point. And I'll just say from my own experience of doing advocacy in the Maine state legislature, anytime I've gone to Augusta to testify for a hearing, um, I've had so many conversations with legislators who've even followed me out of the testimony room to say, thank you so much for being here today. I can't tell you how much it means to us to have someone come and speak from their faith. And what I've heard many times is often there are a number of people of faith who are speaking sort of on the wrong side of the issue, right? Sort of
Mhm,
people who are defending the indefensible from their
mhm.
faith. So to have someone who's coming with, values based in equity and justice and compassion, speaking from faith, actually that's much more rare. So there's such an opportunity here for each of us to craft those heart-centered messages. You don't have to have every word perfectly right. You don't have to know all the facts about the issue, but just showing up and speaking from your faith to indicate how much you care, it really does make a difference.
It's really powerful. In fact, one of the things that I've heard over and over again in the state legislature work I've done is that when a legislator goes to vote, it's the stories they remember. There may have been vast amounts of data presented, and that's all good. I'm not against data, but when they actually go to vote, it's those human stories and those faith-based values that they remember and think of and say, okay, this is how I need to vote on this. So it's very powerful, and shouldn't be quite so rare, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I see that there's a number of chat questions coming in on the chat. And Nicole, I'm wondering if you might want to pop in. I know you've been monitoring the questions in the chat, and I wonder if there's a question or two that you want to speak into the space and invite Sue to respond to.
Yeah, I think the one that I'm wondering the most about, and because I get to I get to choose, I'm going to ask it. Um, yeah, asking, could you tell us more about the beliefs and scripture references people fighting pollution in Cancer Alley are using? I think like one step more specific. What did you see in terms of how, yeah, do you have anything to share about like really specific on people bringing in their faith, bringing in scriptures, values, practices, all of that?
Yeah, I don't have specific scriptures, but one of the things I thought was really noteworthy was um, that the organizers felt a commitment to God, actually. So there was one organizer who told us an extraordinary story of how he had been diagnosed 20 years ago with ALS. And he didn't know what to do. So he prayed about it. And he said that he heard God tell him to send the wheelchair and all the stuff back, because he wouldn't be needing it anymore. And at that moment, he made a commitment that the rest of his life would be dedicated to supporting his community against these big corporations. And that event he was telling about took place 20 years ago. And I met him. He was seemed to be in perfect health as far as I could tell. So I think it's really and I talked to him about it. I thought that is such an extraordinary story. So I said, "How did you know um what the words of God were?" And he said, well, he said, you just have to be discerning, because there are lots of voices. in your head or in your heart that are happening, but you have to discern which is the one of the ultimate good and love. So I think that's what he said to me. I was very moved by this. It was amazing.
Mm. I think you said something about tell a human story. There's
Yes.
something in that invitation, the heart of it.
Yeah.
As we're so deep in how faith can be impactful, this question from Shelby: how do we dance the balance between using our faith as witness and something that's moving for someone, as compared to kind of having a stance of moral superiority,
Oh,
or the ways in which religion can really turn people off or be triggering. Um, yeah, and I like the word dance because this probably is a little more of an art form than anything else.
well, I think that's right. People have such diverse experiences of organized religion, and they have such diverse, different kinds of things they've studied and that sort of thing. And I think the way to sort of get through all of that is for people to talk about their own personal experience. And
Mm,
what the people organizers in Cancer Alley actually did. It's like, I don't know if I agree with every religious thing with the man that was healed of ALS, but
right.
he was telling me an authentic story that I couldn't argue with, right? I mean, he may be of a denomination that I wouldn't personally join, but that wasn't relevant. It was the fact that he had heard a message and responded to it in a personal way, and so I think that's how we get through it. I think there are loaded words. I think sometimes for some people, using the word God is difficult because they may have been taught that God is judgmental or a certain way that they haven't liked. And so, sometimes I offer other words like life energy or life-giving spirit. There are different ways of expressing these things, but I think the bottom line is what is our personal experience, because people can't argue so much with that. And that's why these stories are so good in decision making, political decision making, because if somebody says, fracking has contaminated my well and my livestock have died, you can't really argue. That's a personal experience. You can't, and that was actually said in response to arguments that fracking is underground and not harmful at all and don't worry about it. Well, no, actually, in my farm, we're having these problems. So you can't argue with personal experience very well.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you, Nicole. There's a lot more really great comments in the chat or questions in the chat that we won't have time to get to today, but encourage you, Sue, to kind of look those over to see the things people are thinking about. We're just about out of time. I want to ask one more question and then turn it back to Nicole for a moment. Sue, you are doing really important work, and your work takes you to places where you're seeing and engaging with some really hard things. And I wonder, what is it that keeps you going? Are there particular practices or postures that you take that sustain your hope and keep you engaged?
That's such a great question, and it's one that I think many of us wrestle with all the time. Because, optimism is actually a practice, I think. It's something you have to practice over and over and over again. I mean, just like everyone, I get hit with, really bad news. I mean, it's not fun to watch the fires in Los Angeles, right? But the practice of optimism is being intentional about what you focus your attention on. So and actually recently I've had to limit my news exposure a little bit. But also the practice of optimism is to focus on all the good work that's being done. So one of the things that I think most people would agree with me here is that the news media and the social media tend to focus on negative things and on fear. I mean, even the beginning of the TV news starts with a drum beat, bum ba dum ba dum ba dum, is to get you riled up and fearful. And the good things, all the really good things that people are working on, get very little coverage or exposure. So what I tend to do to keep my energy going, my optimism going, is I focus on finding some of those stories. And that's where I discovered that story I told you about the 13 referendums that passed. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even see this anywhere, but guess what? So it's that intention of, okay, I know these things are going on that are hard, and I'm not sugarcoating it. I'm not pretending they're not there, but okay, I know that, and now I'm going to spend the morning working on an article about some good work that people are doing. So I think, and it's really all about being intentional and not just reactive, right? I mean, I see, I was at the Women's March in Portland last Saturday, and what I saw with a lot of people there was they're just reacting to headlines, which I don't think is helpful. I think we have to focus on what can we do that's really constructive and makes us feel joyful and is, building community. Let's focus on those things and not spend our day sort of reacting to things that are scary or awful or catastrophic or whatever. So I guess that's how I would respond, but it's a challenge for all of us right now.
Yeah. Thank you for that response.
Yeah.
We are just about out of time. I'm going to give you a moment in a minute, Sue, to have the final word, and then you're welcome to go or stay for a little bit of Q&A. But I want to ask Nicole if there are some upcoming opportunities that you might want to share about.
Yeah, thank you, Alan and Sue, for this conversation. It was meaningful for me in the middle of the day today. So yes, of course, for each and every one of you here, we would love for you to continue the journey with those of us at the BTS Center. First, I'd like to invite you to join our Lament with Earth community if you are not already a part of it. Lament with Earth is a seasonal worship-filled online opportunity to collectively grieve that which we are losing and to find possibility and hope in that honest community. Our next gathering is on Wednesday evening, February 5th, and you'll find the link to register in the chat. Second, for any of you looking for a deeper dive into sacred conversations that take seriously this particular moment in history, I invite you to consider joining one of our spiritual accompaniment circles, which will launch in March and meet monthly through October. These are small groups of climate passionate individuals who meet for contemplation, for discernment, for care of one another, and each circle is facilitated by a trained spiritual director. You'll see we have several time options to consider, as well as facilitators of diverse backgrounds. We're offering a taste of this program midday on January 29th if you want to learn more before signing up. And again, you'll find the link for that program in the chat. And finally, I invite you to listen to the BTS Center's podcast, Climate Changed, on whatever podcast platform you prefer. Our most recent episode, which was just released, is on American Catholics and Laudato Si with Jose Aguto. Next month, our episode will focus on parenting in a climate-changed world with Elizabeth Rush. I co-host this podcast with my colleague, Ben Yashua Davis, and so I hope to find my way into your earbuds or your car radio sometime soon. Thanks all. Back to you, Alan.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Sue, I wonder if you can share a little bit about where people can find you if they want to follow your work. Noting that Mary asked a question in the chat, where can we get in? How can we get into one of your classes? So maybe share a little bit about that, your book, your stack. Where can people find you?
Oh, thank you for that. And I want to just thank everybody for being here and sticking out the full hour. So here are a few things. So I actually write a newsletter about every other week, which tends to the positive aspects of environmental work. You can get that on Substack. And also, Alan mentioned my book, Advocating for the Environment. That is, it's a guide to citizen action, and it is available online or in bookstores anywhere. It's got national distribution, so very easy to find it. It's on Amazon, it's in your bookstore, whatever. And then, yes, speaking and workshops. I do public speaking and workshops, and you are welcome to chat with me about it. And I have a website at www.sueinches.com where you can find more information, and you can contact me from there or through the BTS Center if that's something you would like to talk to me about. So that is kind of in a nutshell, some of the ways that you can, and also my newsletter too. You can reply to that. That's another good way to contact me. And I love people who comment on what I write too. It's really wonderful to write things and then have people tell me whether that actually, sat well with them, or maybe they have a suggestion for something I could do more on or whatever. So that's always really nice to get your comment, and you can sign up for that on either my website or on Substack. And it's about every other week that I put out a new newsletter with something in it. Doesn't take too long to read. I know people are busy, but I try to put something in there that kind of is meaty and has value, but you can get through it really quickly and understand what it's about. So those are a few
Great.
thoughts. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sue. Thank you for your good work in the world. Thanks for being with us today. We're out of time for today, but I want to thank you all for joining us for this conversation. And Sue, thanks again for your empowering teaching, your encouraging spirit, your faithful witness. We're going to stop the recording now, but we'll keep the Zoom meeting open for a few more minutes for those of you who might want to stay for some conversation with Sue. So go in peace if you wish, or feel free to linger for a bit of conversation.
Well, great. Well, thank you, Alan. This has been really wonderful. I love the work that the BTS Center and you are doing. So
Thank you so much.